Waterseer uses the environment around it to extract water from the atmosphere. The Waterseer device is planted about 6 or more feet into the ground. The metal sides of the underground chamber are cooled by the surrounding soil. Wind spins a helical turbine, fan blades that direct air into a condensation chamber. As the warmer air cools in the chamber, the water vapor condenses onto the sides. Clean, safe, pure water can be extracted from the reservoir through a simple hose and pump. Because the sides of the underground chamber are always cooler than the air, Waterseer is always collecting water, day and night. Under optimal conditions, a single Waterseer may collect as much as 37 litres of clean, fresh water every day. Several can generate enough water for an entire community. Our goal is to make Waterseer available worldwide to the areas where they are most needed.
The Waterseer, it's an amazing device. It's going to give free access to water to the 1 in 5 people around the planet who don't have access to clean, free water.
1 in 3 people, more than 2.3 billion, don't have clean, safe drinking water. 1 in 5 people around the world, more than 1.2 billion, live in areas of water scarcity. Every day, more than 18,000 people die from a lack of safe drinking water.
I mean, this amazing device could save 18,000 lives per day.
Poor women and children walk for hours every day to collect the water that they need to live.
It's so philanthropic. I mean, just look at those poor people struggling to get their water out of puddles.
After walking for hours along remote trails, they fill their containers with 40 pounds of water and carry it back to their village along the same dangerous track, often with young children in tow.
I mean, this video isn't the slightest bit manipulative. I mean, won't somebody think of the children?
Sometimes they make the same trip several times a day just to get enough water for their family to drink, cook, bathe and clean. What if there was an inexpensive solution that would allow people to collect clean, safe water where they live, directly from the air around them?
Yes, just look at that mother and her poor, malnourished third world child mournfully pouring that water in the air. If only there were a way he could get it out, maybe some sort of computer-generated mushroom.
And Waterseer works 24 hours a day, forever, without labour, electricity, or damage to the environment.
I mean, it's a miracle. And all they need of you for this amazing device is $77,000, and so far they've raised over $180,000. And their Indiegogo campaign sets the tone from the very first line of every 90 seconds a child dies due to lack of clean water. Oddly enough, they do stick with the computer-generated mushrooms than, say, for instance, I don't know, the prototypes from, say, for instance, their design competition. I wonder why they didn't use those on their Indiegogo page. But while these designs are indeed comical, that's not actually the problem here. The problem is the very concept on which this machine is devised is complete and utter bullshit. But how can I say such terrible things about a company that just wants to think of the children and give them clean, free water?
After walking for hours along remote trails, they fill their containers with 40 pounds of water and carry it back to their village along the same dangerous track, often with young children in tow.
I mean, they've got the National Peace Corps Association involved with this. Well, firstly, and maybe most importantly, before I get on to explaining why this device is garbage scientifically, people, like most animals, die pretty quickly if they have no water at all. The bottom line is, people, like animals, tend to gravitate pretty quickly to water, irrespective of the dangers. Basically, it's not water availability that kills most people, it's lack of water treatment. A device like this, even if it worked, which it absolutely will not, is solving a non-issue. If they were really interested in getting the world clean water, they'd be in the business of water treatment. So this device, on a good day, would have to pump something like a tanker truck full of air, harvested near ground level where there's lots of dust, to get a single glass of water. So where's that water coming from? Well, let's take a cube of air, say for instance a cubic meter. And for perspective, that's what a cubic meter of air looks like. Cubic meter of water would weigh about 1 ton. A cubic meter of air, on the other hand, only weighs about 1 kilogram. It's more or less the mass of a bag of sugar. Well, you see, air can carry water. It's called humidity. So 0% humidity means that there is 0 water in the air, and 100% humidity is when it's completely saturated, when you can't get any more water into the air. So how much water can air actually hold? Well, it turns out it's temperature sensitive. So on a hot day, say for instance 30 degrees Celsius or about 90 Fahrenheit, as I add water to this 1 cubic meter of air, that evaporates into the volume and the humidity rises. So I've added about 30 grams, 30 milliliters, about the volume of a chocolate bar into this 1 cubic meter, and then you have 100% humidity. But if it's cooler, say for instance 10 degrees Celsius, that's only 10 degrees above freezing, well here you only get about a third of that water into the air before you reach 100% humidity. So if I take a cubic meter of air at 30 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity and cool it down to 10 degrees Celsius, I get 100% humidity again, but 20 milliliters of water condenses out of the air. And if I take that air and heat it up again to 30 degrees Celsius, again I still have 10 grams of water dissolved in the air. It's just now that I'm at 30 degrees, it's only 30% relative humidity. Fascinating, I hear you say. But so what? Well, this is the first reason why this device is fundamentally flawed. You see, they said they're going to take the air and cool it down in the ground to condense that water. So let's take some examples. Now, ground temperature varies on its depth, but being generous, it's only going to be about 10 degrees Celsius at about 2 meters in depth, and that's being generous. So if it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, that's 30 Celsius, and 100% humidity, 1 cubic meter of air contains about 30 grams of water. So if I cool that down to 10 degrees Celsius, you condense out about 20 milliliters of water and push out the remaining air at 10 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity. That is, you would get a harvest of about 20 grams of water per cubic meter of air. Right, so let's now say that it's 10 degrees outside and 100% humidity. Well, clearly no air cooling can take place, so the air is just pumped out at 10 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity. You get 0 water out of the air. Well, roughly how much of the year would you expect this to be the case? Well, you'll recall as you get a couple of meters down into the Earth, the temperature more and more reflects the average temperature of the Earth at that point. So for about half the year, it's going to be cooler than the surface temperatures, which means that the Waterseer might work. But for the other 6 months of the year, the air temperature is going to be cooler than the Earth temperature 2 meters down, which prohibits the Waterseer from working.
Because the sides of the underground chamber are always cooler than the air, Waterseer is always collecting water, day and night.
Which ballpark numbers means the Waterseer will produce no water whatsoever for about 6 months of the year. And for the record, people typically die of thirst after only about a week without water. Okay, so for half the year it can't work. But it'll work in the desert, right? You know, in drought-stricken areas, in arid areas, right? You know, like they claim in the video.
For each Waterseer bought in the US, we will provide one to someone who needs access to clean, safe water in developing countries and in drought-stricken and arid regions where clean water is scarce.
Well, let's take a typical desert area in America. I don't know, what would be a typical desert area? I don't know, maybe something like New Mexico.
You're goddamn right.
Well, when it's hot, in July, it's about 30 degrees Celsius, now 90 Fahrenheit, and the humidity's about 20%, which means that if you cool that down to 10 degrees Celsius, the humidity goes up to about 60%, and no water whatsoever will be condensed. That is, no matter how many Waterseers you have, whether it's 1, 10, 100 or 1,000, you will never get a single drop of water.
Several can generate enough water for an entire community.
In fact, this chart is beautiful because basically Waterseer can only work when the dew point is at the ground temperature at about 2 meters down, which is about 10 degrees Celsius. So Waterseer might actually be able to condense some water on 1 or 2 days per year in an arid desert type area.
Clean, safe water in developing countries, and in drought-stricken and arid regions where clean water is scarce.
Well, okay, I hear you say. So it won't work in arid climates. But what if there were, say, for instance, 100% humidity at 90 Fahrenheit, 30 Celsius? You know, like, say, for instance, in Florida before a hurricane or a thunderstorm or something. Now, for this example, you're going to have to ignore the fact that places that typically have high humidity typically get high rainfall, and the device would have no use whatsoever. But just for the sake of argument, how well would this device work in such conditions? Well, under these ideal circumstances, of 30 Celsius and 100% humidity, you would cool that air down to 10 Celsius and you would get 20 milliliters of water or so out of a cubic meter of air, which means you would need somewhere between 2 to 3 of these giant tanker trucks is the volume of air you would have to put through this device to get 1 liter of water. However, they claim under ideal circumstances they're going to get 40 litres of water per day. So they must pump about 2,000 cubic metres of air through this pipe per day. Give or take, that's the volume of about 100 20-ton tanker trucks. And they've got to do that through this device 24 hours a day. So we can calculate a rough flow rate for what's going to be going through these pipes. And it's going to be about 100 or so cubic meters per hour, or 0.03 cubic meters per second, about 30 liters per second. Well, we can see the rough dimensions of the device, and we can see the pipe going down is about 14 centimeters in diameter. So the airflow going down's not too bad. It's about 1.5 meters per second, about walking speed. But then the air has to come out of a pipe that is generously 1/3 of the size, which means that the exhaust blowing up through this thing is coming out at about 15 meters per second. It's about 30 miles per hour or 50 kilometers per hour. And it's got to be blowing that hard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Kind of tough seeing is this device, when there is no wind, the device will be 100% inefficient.
Because the sides of the underground chamber are always cooler than the air, Waterseer is always collecting water, day and night, even without wind.
So yeah, the volume of air this device has to push through about a couple of inches diameter tube seems highly questionable. But the real killer for this device is the tiny issue of thermodynamics, the simple heat exchange. Now, to boil water, to turn it from liquid into steam takes an obscene amount of energy. I mean, you know this. When you put water on a stove, it reaches boiling point in a relatively short period of time, but then takes a very long time to actually boil that water dry. That is, to turn that water from a liquid into a gas. So if you want to reverse that process, to condense the water, you have to absorb an obscene amount of energy. I mean, these are just the simple numbers. If you take 1 kilogram of ice, it's about a 1 liter pop bottle or so, to turn that kilogram of ice at 0 degrees C into a kilogram of water at 0 degrees C takes about 350 kilojoules of energy. I mean, just to put that into perspective, if you were to put that same energy into water at 0 degrees Celsius, that would be enough energy to heat it up to about 80 degrees Celsius. Now, to take 1 kilogram of water at 100 degrees Celsius and turn it into steam at 100 degrees Celsius takes about 2,000 kilojoules of energy. Or to reverse that process, if you want to take 1 kilogram of steam at 100 degrees Celsius and turn it back into water at 100 degrees Celsius, you have to take out about 2,000 kilojoules of energy from the system. That massive amount of energy is because when water is in the gas phase, it has no hydrogen bonds. And when it's in liquid form, it has lots of them. That's the energy that you've got to get rid of. It's simple thermodynamics. You cannot dodge it. It's conservation of energy stuff. That's the energy you've got to get rid of when you're basically turning the gas into a liquid. It doesn't really make that much difference if you do this at boiling point are at room temperature. You break the hydrogen bonds, you've got to put energy into the system. You want to condense the water, you've got to take that energy out of the system. It's that simple. Okay, so 2,000 kilojoules for 1 kilogram of water, and they want to do 40 kilograms per day.
Under optimal conditions, a single Waterseer may collect as much as 37 litres of clean, fresh water every day.
So they've got to get rid of 80,000 kilojoules of energy. And there is nowhere else for that energy to go but into the surrounding soil. Nowhere else for it to go. So how much will 80,000 kilojoules heat up the surrounding soil? Well, we said in our example that the surface temperature is going to be about 30 degrees on the ground, and in the ground at about 2 meters depth, we're going to be very generous and say that it's 10 degrees Celsius. So how much soil can you heat up from 10 degrees to 30 degrees with 80,000 kilojoules of energy? Well, it turns out a kilogram of soil is basically a litre. To heat up 1 kilo of soil by 1 degree Celsius takes about 1 kilojoule. So to heat that 1 kilogram up by 20 degrees takes about 20 kilojoules of energy. So 80,000 kilojoules of energy would heat up about 4,000 kilograms of soil. Give or take about 4,000 litres of soil, about 4 cubic meters. So what would that look like on our Waterseer? Well, we know that it's buried about 6 feet or 2 meters down, so that bulb is about 0.6 meters in diameter. So you can work out its volume at about 100 litres, which is about right for their perspective. You know, half full is going to be about 40 litres. That's on the right ballpark. So to condense the 40 litres of water they want here, they will have to heat up about 4,000 litres of soil to 30 degrees Celsius. Basically, after 1 day of optimal conditions, the device will have heated up so much of the surrounding soil that it will be at the surface temperature. And that's only the energy you have to get rid of to turn the water from a gas into a liquid. It's ignoring the fact that you have to cool down 2,000 cubic meters of air. That's about 2 tons of air from 30 degrees to 10 degrees. Or maybe a more intuitive argument. If you blow hot summer air over a square meter of winter soil, how long will it be before that soil is at the air temperature? Or another way of proving that this device is utter bullshit. So it's going to condense 40 litres of water. So it has to dump 80,000 kilojoules of energy into the soil. We can express that as a rate. A day is 24 hours, and each hour is 3,600 seconds, so a day, conveniently, is about 85,000 seconds. Watts is joules per second, so 80,000 kilojoules in 80,000 seconds is a rate of about 1 kilowatt. That's the minimum energy you have to get rid of. So we know the size of the bulb, so we can calculate its surface area, and it's about 1 square meter. So the heat flux on the pump is about 1 kilowatt per square meter. Well, let's compare that to what we get on the surface. Turns out about 1 kilowatt per square meter is the energy that you get from the sun when it's directly overhead at the equator. If this device were working as specified, the heating rate of that bulb is comparable to it being directly under the sun 24/7 at the equator. Yeah, it's not going to stay at 10 degrees Celsius for long. And once it gets up to 30 degrees Celsius, even with 100% humidity, the device will stop working entirely. Even with these perfectly optimal conditions. But maybe I need to wrap this up in some more emotive language. You know, like when someone think about the one child who dies of thirst every second and give me some money. So if you live in a hot, dry area where the humidity is below about 30%, anyone who relies on the Waterseer will not get a single drop of water and will die of thirst. Alternatively, if it's a hot, humid area, one which we'll assume for the moment magically has low rainfall for some unexplained reason, it might work for almost a day. And then everyone who is trusted in the Waterseer to keep them alive will die of thirst. Or maybe, just maybe, in a perfect area for the Waterseer, where the humidity is high, and the temperature is high, and the ground is a magical perfect conductor. But all of a sudden, there's no wind. Everyone who depends on the Waterseer to provide them with drinking water will die of thirst. And these are the most trivial thermodynamic calculations. Stuff that you can do in about 10 minutes with numbers from Wiki that have been known for hundreds of years. However, you check out the guy behind the Indiegogo campaign, you get some distinctly mixed messages. Apparently the guy's been an immigrant, a soldier, an officer, a dad, a CTO, a COO, and a CEO. An entrepreneur, investor, and a patriot. He even has his own lab. It's called Viki Labs? Whatever. A research lab. It's got to be. I mean, here you ask. It must be, because they've got the Waterseer listed on their projects page, along with other ideas like the Power Max, which doesn't seem to exist anywhere else on the entire web. The odd thing is Donald's previous companies, like this one from 2002 to 2004, of which he was the COO and CEO, was called S3 Technologies, where S3 stands for speed, simplicity, and success. Oddly, that seemed to use exactly the same address as VC Labs. Oddly enough, after S3 vanished, he became the Chief Executive Officer of T3, Tiger Tech, which stands for trusted, talented, and tireless. Odd thing is, Tiger Tech again seems to share exactly the same address as VC Labs. Now, Tiger Tech does apparently have some real government contracts for education, training services, and professional services, and they seem to make a lot of bullshit promotional videos like this one for themselves.
Inside the keystone are the three ideas that are T3. We are tireless in our motivation. We are talented in our analysis. We are trusted in our pursuit of truth.
Poor women and children walk for hours every day to collect the water that they need to live.
We are T3 Tiger Tech. T3 Tiger Tech. Trusted, talented, tireless.
Hi, it's Vince with ShamWow. You'll be saying wow every time you use this towel.
Yeah, they seem to be the sort of company that would come out with this sort of thing, that every contributor can download a high-resolution digital JPEG for this poster, with Waterseer, the gift of water, safety and empowerment and hope and freedom and health. Yeah, they seem to be pretty good at promoting stuff. Not quite so sure they understand the thermodynamics about getting water out of air, but hey, maybe that's okay, because they had engineers at the University of California, Berkeley, to help them. Specifically, the Sutaja Center, where entrepreneurship and technology collide. The Sutaja Center at UC Berkeley is where students study and practice technologically centric entrepreneurship and innovation. Well, let's see how their chief scientist and founding director describes the Waterseer project.
And so we have students that are both working with the Sutaja Center as well as the Jacobs Institute for Design. We're testing the boundaries of what you can actually achieve, and in a practical sense, of being able to take water out of this, this type of atmosphere.
Now you may think, what, seriously? University of California, Berkeley is in on this? Yep. And this is where it gets kind of depressing. This guy is their chief scientist and founding director. And he hasn't even looked at the simple thermodynamics. Seriously, here is the interim faculty director of another Berkeley institute, the Jacobs Institute, worrying about the design of a machine that you can trivially show is a non-starter thermodynamically.
Staff in the Jacobs Institute have been really hands-on involved with helping the students think through both the conceptual questions about the design as well as concrete fabrication.
But hey, this is the University of California at Berkeley, currently rated as number 13 in the world. I mean, they've got to have some real quality students there who will actually think this through and work out that the whole thing is thermodynamically a complete non-starter.
Getting water from the air is the purest form of water that you can get.
The project is in itself a very profound, impactful solution to many people around the world who don't have clean, accessible water.
Far be it from me to lecture engineering students, but usually the sequence of events goes like this. Before you start worrying how to make a machine, you have to work out if the machine is even possible at all.
Being able to know how to take this idea and make it into a reality, the idea process was the most challenging.
Well, that's an interesting opinion there from a guy wearing a University of Berkeley engineering top. However, I would have thought that beating the thermodynamics would have been the toughest challenge here. The conservation of energy stuff.
This is obviously a big concept, and in order to actually do it, we need a really clever design idea.
Dude, all the design ideas in the world will not get around the fact that for every litre of water you condense, you have to get rid of about 2,000 kilojoules of energy.
Artists and designers and engineers on the same team, and so initially when we set out for a solution, we initially wanted to mimic the hydrophobicity design of a lily pad.
Artists and designers and engineers. And maybe next time you should get someone on the team who understands conservation of energy.
Making clean water possible in these parts of the world will have a simply life-changing and revolutionary effect on what it means for almost everybody in that part of the world, and therefore in the whole world.
Yes, and with such world-changing aspirations, maybe that's why the first prize in their design competition was $12,000. Seriously, I still can't get over the fact that they had a competition in an engineering school, which you can show with just some simple back-of-the-envelope calculations that the whole idea is bullshit. Anyway, the thing that's maybe a little more funny than that is the revolutionary designs that the engineers at Berkeley came up with. Yes, they even made a Waterseer for a lily pad thing, which they claim makes 3 to 4 litres of water per day.
Waterseer uses the environment around it to extract water from the atmosphere. Here's how it works. A metal central support pole is planted into the ground several meters deep. The lower temperature of the ground cools the pole, below the temperature of the surrounding air. Water vapor condenses onto the broad surfaces of the plates and flows down the channel to a collection vessel. A single Waterseer may collect as much as 3 litres or more of clean, fresh water every day. Waterseer works forever, without labour, electricity or damage to the environment. Several can generate enough water for an entire community. For each Waterseer bought in the US, we will provide one to someone who needs access to clean, safe water in developing countries and in drought-stricken and arid regions where clean water is scarce.
Which is way more bullshit than the claims they made about this thing. I mean, really, guys, I don't want to impugn your engineering ability, but are you sure you're not just measuring rainfall here? So it turns out the Berkeley guys weren't the only ones to buy into this. Simple ideas will solve all of the world's water shortage problems. I mean, I found this in a news report months before the Indiegogo thing.
Electric wind turbine that drags the air down this pipe.
Avdianko has created water,
1/3 of a gallon during one day.
out of thin air.
Wow, this water comes out of nowhere. Why can't we just reuse it? Those yellow areas can turn into bright green lawns.
Avdianko sees it as a solution for poor countries. He has entered it in USD's Changemaker Challenge, an innovation competition.
And believe it or not, I mean, you just tear your nails out at this sort of thing. The guy won a prize for an idea that is fundamentally flawed, and it's trivial to show that it's fundamentally flawed. Personally, I would love nothing more than a slap fight of these two locked in this battle of intellectual property rights over something that is thermodynamically a non-starter. In the meanwhile, it's going to be interesting to see the response from Berkeley, Tiger Tech, Viki Labs, and the National Peace Corps. So you had this. Question. You list the National Peace Corps Association as a partner. What role have they played? The National Peace Corps Association has been involved in the development of the Waterseer since the initial testing in April of 2016 at UC Berkeley. They have agreed to coordinate field testing of Waterseer in targeted emerging economies in the coming year. National Peace Corps Association and VK Labs have a formal agreement to promote National Peace Corps Association member entrepreneurs and to facilitate the development of National Peace Corps Association member innovations. Whatever that may mean. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to know what the National Peace Corps Association and University of California, Berkeley's opinion is on how they raised over $180,000 with a sappy, manipulative video like this.
After walking for hours along remote trails, they fill their containers with 40 pounds of water and carry it back to their village along the same dangerous track, often with young children in tow.
To create a device that cannot work as claimed.